There's something quiet but powerful about words. They don't make noise for very long. They don't leave marks on the body. And most of the time, they disappear the moment they're spoken. And yet, some of them stay. They stay long after the conversation ends. They stay while you're washing the dishes, while you're driving home, while you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why your mind won't slow down. It's strange how that works. You can hear 100 neutral sentences in a day, but one sentence, just one, can linger. And not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because it touched something tender. That's the quiet power of words. They don't just communicate information. They shape how we feel, how we remember, how we see ourselves. Tonight, I want to talk about that power in a gentle way, not to accuse, not to analyze too deeply, just to notice, because almost everyone has been affected by words, both in ways that hurt and in ways that help them keep going. There's a moment many of us recognize. You're in an ordinary conversation, nothing intense, nothing serious. And someone says something that sounds reasonable. They might say, "I'm just being honest," or "I don't mean anything by it," or "I'm just a blunt person." And the sentence itself might not even sound cruel. It might be framed as advice or feedback or concern. But there's something in the tone, or the timing, or the choice of words. Something lands the wrong way. You feel it, but you don't react. You smile, you nod, you say, "Yeah, I get it." And maybe you even mean it in that moment. But later, much later, your body remembers before your mind does. Your chest feels tight. Your thoughts circle back. You replay the sentence again and again, trying to understand why it felt so heavy. And that's often when the doubt starts. Was that actually unkind? Am I overthinking this? Am I just too sensitive? Because when someone is openly cruel, it's easier to name. Your nervous system knows what to do with it. But when words are wrapped in honesty or good intentions, it gets complicated. The pain becomes quieter, more confusing. You don't feel angry, you feel unsure, and uncertainty can be exhausting. There's a belief many people carry, often without realizing it, that honesty has to be sharp to be real, that if something hurts, it must be true. That kindness softens the message too much. But honesty doesn't have to wound to be honest. There's a difference between clarity and harshness, between truth and judgment, and our bodies usually know the difference before our minds catch up. Words that are meant to help don't leave you smaller. They don't make you doubt your worth. They don't stay awake in your head long after the conversation is over. But words that cut, even unintentionally, often do. Sometimes the words aren't even dramatic. They can be subtle. A comment that minimizes something you cared about. A joke that lands too close to a sensitive spot. A remark that turns your confidence into something questionable. Things like, "Don't get too confident. You're probably overestimating yourself. It's not that impressive. Anyone could do that." Ignore. These sentences rarely sound aggressive on the surface, but they have weight because they don't address an action. They quietly question the person. And once a person starts questioning themselves, the sentence doesn't need to be repeated. The mind takes over. You begin to edit yourself before you speak. You hesitate before sharing. You soften your opinions. You shrink your presence just a little. Not because you were asked to, but because a seed was planted, and seeds grow quietly. Another kind of sentence carries a different kind of weight, not the honest kind, but the openly harsh kind, words that are exaggerated or unfair, or spoken from anger, envy, or carelessness. Sometimes they're said once, sometimes they're repeated. And even when you know they aren't accurate, they can still affect you deeply, because the mind has a habit of asking, what if? What if they see something I don't? What if I really am like that? What if others think the same thing and just don't say it? These thoughts don't come with volume. They come at night. They arrive when the world is quiet, when there's nothing else to distract you. And suddenly, a single sentence becomes a courtroom in your head. You replay moments from your past. You analyze your tone, your intentions, your mistakes. You put yourself on trial using words that were never meant to be evidence. And that's often when stress shows up, not as panic, not as tears, but as restlessness, as tension, as fatigue. You feel tired even when you've slept. You feel heavy without knowing why. Because carrying unprocessed words takes energy. There's something important to remember here. Not every sentence spoken about you is a reflection of you. Some words are reflections of the speaker's mood, their wounds, their beliefs, their unresolved emotions. But your nervous system doesn't always know that. It just reacts. So, if you've ever felt shaken by words that weren't fair, there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And there's a gentle way to work with this. Instead of arguing with the sentence in your mind, you can slow it down, separate it into two parts. First, the content. Is it specific? Is it factual? Is it something you can verify or change? Or is it vague, global, and personal? Second, the impact. What did it touch in you? What fear did it awaken? What old story did it connect to? Because often, the pain doesn't come from the sentence itself. It comes from what it echoes. A fear of not being enough. A fear of being misunderstood. A fear of being rejected. When you see that, something shifts. You stop trying to prove the sentence wrong. And you start caring for the part of you that felt threatened. That's a quieter kind of strength. But words don't only wound. They also hold an incredible ability to steady us. And the words that help the most are rarely dramatic. They're often simple. A sentence that says, I see you. That makes sense. You've been carrying a lot. I'm glad you told me. These words don't fix anything immediately, but they change the emotional climate. They create safety. And safety is where healing begins. Safety is where motivation returns. Not the loud, push yourself kind, but the gentle, sustainable kind. The kind that lets you breathe again. There's a quiet difference between encouragement and pressure. Pressure says, do better. Be stronger. Push through. Encouragement says, I know this is hard, and I trust you to find your way. Encouragement doesn't deny difficulty. It acknowledges it. And that acknowledgement can feel like relief. Sometimes the most supportive words aren't even spoken out loud. They're implied in tone, in presence, in listening without interruption. But when they are spoken, they tend to be specific. Not, "You're amazing," but, "I noticed how patient you were. I noticed you didn't give up. I noticed you tried again." These kinds of words don't inflate the ego. They anchor the person in reality. They say, "I see your effort. I see your humanity." And that matters more than we admit. There's another place where words matter deeply. The quietest place. The way you speak to yourself. Most people are far kinder to others than they are to themselves. They offer understanding freely. They offer patience. They offer grace. And then, internally, they speak in a voice they would never use with someone they love. A voice that says, "You should be better by now. You always mess things up. Why are you like this?" That voice often sounds convincing, not because it's true, but because it's familiar, and familiarity can feel like authority. But words repeated often are not the same as truth. They're just practiced. And you are allowed to practice different words. Words that don't shame you into progress. Words that guide you forward. Instead of saying, "I failed," you might try, "That didn't go the way I hoped. I can learn from this." Instead of saying, "I'm bad at this," you might try, "I'm still learning." Instead of saying, "I can't believe I'm like this," you might try, "I'm having a hard moment. It will pass." These aren't lies. They're perspective. They don't erase responsibility. They remove cruelty. And cruelty, especially self-directed cruelty, is rarely a good teacher. Growth doesn't happen in a constant state of self-attack. It happens when there is enough safety to reflect. That's why the words you choose internally and externally matter so much. They create the environment you live in. Words are a kind of energy. They can soothe or agitate. They can clarify or confuse. They can open or close. And most of the time, we don't mean to harm. We speak when we're tired, when we're stressed, when we want relief. But it's worth pausing, especially before speaking in moments of tension, asking yourself one simple question. Is this sentence going to make things better, or is it only going to release my frustration? If it's only release, you can pause. 10 seconds, one breath, and choose again. Not because you're afraid of honesty, but because you care about what your words leave behind. And if tonight you're carrying words someone else left with you, a sentence that wasn't fair, a judgment that wasn't earned, a comment that stayed longer than it should have, I want to offer you something else to hold. That sentence does not define you. Your life is not a quote someone threw at you. You are more than a moment, more than an opinion, more than a careless remark. You are shaped by your values, your choices, the way you keep showing up even when it's hard. You don't need to answer every voice. You don't need to prove yourself to everyone. You only need to stay connected to what feels true and steady inside you. So as the night settles and things grow quieter, you might choose one gentle sentence to say to yourself. Just one. Something like, "I'm allowed to rest. I'm learning. I'm doing the best I can today. I don't have to carry everything tonight." Let that sentence be the one that stays. Let the rest fade and allow yourself to sleep.